Divine greetings. This is Talks with Netrit Aset. I know it's been a while since I've done a talk, but I'm back and we are going to pick up where I left off. So tonight's show is entitled Talks with Netrit Aset on Maat Philosophy Part 4. So for those of you who are viewing this for the first time or joining me for the first time, please feel free to go back and look at the other parts in this 4-part series. So tonight we are actually going to cover, hopefully, precepts 8 through 11. However, before we get started, I always like to pour libation. So I will go ahead and do that, and then we will jump right in because we have a lot to cover. O divine creator, manifesting everywhere and in all things, going by many names, who I call Ra. I call upon you. I thank and I honor you for the breath of life. I thank and honor you for this opportunity to bring divine teachings to help elevate those souls that are ready to elevate. I pour libation in your honor. I call upon all of the Neteru, those cosmic forces and principles that work on behalf of the Creator, helping to keep life moving forward. I especially call on the cosmic force, Maat. I pray that Maat may be with me and that you may touch all the hearts and minds of those that watch this broadcast today and in the future. I pray that the spirit of Maat may reach every corner of this earth, helping people to realize their divine nature, helping us to rise above the low nature, bringing restoration to the self and to this planet. I pour libation in honor of all the Neteru. I pour libation in honor of the elements of this realm: water, fire, air, earth. I pray for a cleansing of this planet, a cleansing of the people on this planet. I pray that the children of Ra may rise once again and move into their rightful place, helping to restore Maat. I pour libation in honor of all of those ancestors that came before us and paved the way for us, who sacrificed their life to make this world a better place. All the freedom fighters, the martyrs, those whose names we know and who do not know. I pray for light, peace, and prosperity on your spiritual journey. I pour libation in honor of my bloodline ancestors in every way that it flows. I pray for light, peace, healing, and prosperity for my bloodline. I say, oh, protect. All right, now that we've opened officially with the African tradition of honoring the Creator, honoring the cosmic forces, honoring our realm of existence, and honoring those ancestors that came before us, that gave their life to help make this planet a better place, and to my bloodline and your bloodline ancestors, as we continue to evolve, they continue to evolve and grow through us. All right. Uja Seneb, Life, Vitality, and Health. To everyone that's on, thank you for joining. I know that you will enjoy this show. Again, this is the 4th series in the Talks with Netrit Maat. Maat too, with Aset. Hopefully, if you have not had a chance to listen to the previous talks, you will find time or be inspired to find time after this talk. So tonight we're going to jump right into the precepts. We're going to pick up where we left off. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so before we start, I want to say adorations to the Creator, manifesting as Ra, manifesting as Maat, manifesting as Jehuti. Big dua to all of my preceptors, my teachers, and those scholars that I have read their books and studied their works. All of that information has influenced me and continues to influence me. So I just send adorations to all of them. So tonight is Maat Philosophy Part 4. And I just want to briefly, before I get started, I want to make sure that everyone can see me, hear me, see the screen okay. Can someone just drop me a message in the group chat saying that you can see and hear me fine and see the screen okay before I get started. I see Les, dua. I see Asada, dua, blessings. I see Akar Atunre. Okay, I got a yes, so I will continue. All right, so I just wanted to give a brief explanation about the title, just in case there's some ambiguity about it. So Maat philosophy, within the context that we're talking about it, simply means the study of the wisdom teachings associated with Maat. So the Neteru, they have wisdom teachings associated with them. So you can take this title and interchange it. I can take out the name of Maat, and I can put Aset philosophy or Jehuti philosophy, and then we would be discussing the wisdom teachings associated with those neters. So those, like I said, each neter has their own set of teachings associated with them. All right. So let me do this. All right, so hopefully we can get through all of the precepts that I have slated for us to get through tonight. So I'm kind of like just diving right in. So we left off the last talk with Precept 7. So now we are up to Precept 8. I want to make sure my pointer is working good. So Precept 8, when we look at the glyphs, we see on, no, or not. And then we see it's Taket or Tachet, it depends on who's saying it. Jed, which means to speak, say, declare, to tell, to narrate. Then we have which is I or me. And then we have Gerg or Erg or U, and then we have the U to make it plural. So it can be translated into lies, right? So that's the transliteration. So the translation, and again, I've said this in the past. So the translations vary from the person to person. So that's why I'm going through this task of showing what's there, and then you can see how I come to the final translation. So for this one, I have, I will not. And we want to get to the point where we can say affirmatively, I have not. So we say, I will not speak, say, declare, tell, or narrate. So that includes non-verbally, as in writing and acting, lies, or deceit. And so when we look at these precepts, the approach that I take is looking at it from a larger perspective and then a smaller perspective. So we go micro and we go macro and micro, because in order for the precept to be easily followed and carried out, there has to be support for it throughout society or the social setting in which we live. So with that being said, here's a few proverbs to give us some more insight into that precept. It's better to be punished for telling the truth than to be rewarded for saying lies. The blessings of thy eternal part are health, vigor, and proportion. The greatest of these is health. What health is to the body, even that is honesty to the soul. Kemetic proverb. Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but they that deal truly are his delight. That's the Bible, Proverbs 12:22. Lies are the beginnings of thieves. Show me a liar, and I'll show you a thief. Japanese proverb. So we know that this is a common theme through most spiritual doctrines, right? This construct of lying. But yet, socially, lying, especially in Western culture, is a normal practice. And going back to that proverb, it even talked about narrating lies. And so when we think about this precept from a macro perspective, we are constantly being influenced by lies, right? Most of us are living lives based on lies, right? What do I mean by that? Most of us went to Western schools, right? So we're finding out that a lot of the things that they taught us in school was based on lies. It was fictitious, right? There's books out, there's documentaries out now talking about the lies my teacher told me. I mean, we can talk about this for days on end, about the ways in which lies impact our life, right? A lie can cause someone to make a decision that they would not have made had they known the truth. So when we start looking at this from a macro perspective, we want to be stewards of the truth, right? We want to help Maa't begin to manifest throughout society. So we want to be aware of the ways in which lies are being perpetuated so that we can intercept them when we can, right? And begin to start doing things to help correct them. So one of the things that some people are doing right now is they're trying to rewrite the school books, right? They're trying to go through the history books and see where all the lies are and how the lies have created and maintained this society of white supremacy and Black inferiority. A lot of people of color, especially African Americans, we don't even have a true sense of our lineage anymore. There's all of these lies around where we came from. Now we're discovering that we have a rich ancestral heritage that leads us back to the Aboriginals, the people who were already here. And that's why I have these pictures up here to show you. It's coming forth now that we all didn't come here, on a slave ship, or not all of our ancestry came here by that means. We share some ancestry that may have come that way, but the whole story about melanated people already being here was totally, covered in lies. And so now these things are resurfacing, and it's helping society begin to right the wrongs. So again, just looking at that precept as something that we want to kind of like recognize how it's being perpetuated. Even when we watch television, and I talk about television a lot because television programming is exactly that. It's programming us to believe lies. Even when we're watching a fictitious movie, the brain is not really processing it as fictitious. That's why we have the physiological responses to the movie. So if someone is being murdered on the screen, I will react like I don't want to look at it, or it may make me feel a certain way. So in ancient Kemet, movies that even depicted, or narrations, or theater that depicted these constant lies wouldn't be allowed, because we need to feed the mind what the soul will be able to feed off of, and that's the truth. So this is really interesting because there's this construct or this idea that liars, well, let's just say habitual liars or pathological liars, they have a physiological component that actually leads to them lying. And so in this article, it talks about liars having this having this aspect in the brain that's different from everyone else. So I'm just going to read some of this. So the brains of pathological liars have structured abnormalities that could make fibbing come naturally. Some people have an edge up on others in their ability to tell lies, says Adrian Rain, a psychologist at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. They are better wired for the complex computations involved in sophisticated lies. He found that pathological liars have, on average, more white matter in their prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain that is active during lying, and less gray matter than people who are not serial fibbers. White matter enables quick, complex thinking, while gray matter mediates inhibitions. And so this is really interesting because now we're being able to see why the precepts are there in the first place, right? Because we all are incarnated with challenges, and a lot of these challenges are somewhat out of our control initially, but yet the Creator has given us the power to gain control over them. And so I thought that was really important to share, that there's a brain a brain component to something as simple as telling lies. I mean, we've all had people in our lives that just seem to be like pathological liars, and you're like, why do they keep telling lies? I don't understand. So there you have it. So does this mean that people who are wired to lie can't overcome lying? That's a question. That's a question that we have to ask ourselves. So if I was born with this condition, right, or if I developed this condition, and now there's a physiological component that's making it difficult for me to correct it, even though there's a precept indicating that I should, does that mean I have to, just live the rest of my life stuck with that precept? Absolutely not. Everyone has predisposed impressions, conditions, and wiring that he or she will need to overcome in life. That is a part of why we incarnate into time and space. And so this is going to be very important as we continue to go through these precepts, because we will see that we have a tendency to find reasons to justify certain precepts or why we can't overcome certain precepts. But every single person that has incarnated into time and space incarnated with some type of condition or impression or wiring that they can overcome. However, the desire to overcome them must first develop. So if we don't have a desire to start living in alignment with Maat, right, because we don't really care, then we're going to be a slave to whatever wiring or impressions or conditions that we have. However, the Creator gave us the power to overcome any and everything within the personality, any and everything that's going on, even physiologically. So it starts, however, with the desire to change. So are there times when lying is in order? So I shared Proverbs that frowned on lying, and then there's some Proverbs that kind of like say lying is okay. Even a healer's lies are a big relief to a sick person. Lies have their uses. Lies have their place. Deceiving a deceiver is no knavery, right? And that's just simply meaning mischief. So this is very important, especially when we look at the precepts and we start to understand that everything is in divine order, right? We just have to understand when we're doing things, are we doing it under the guise of Maat or under the guise of Isfet? So apparently there might be a situation where a lie may be necessary, right? And when we are tapping into Maat and when we are sincerely trying to elevate ourselves spiritually, we will know if the situation truly warrants it, right? And, one example would be talking someone down off of a ledge, right? Someone could be about to kill themselves. There's times where, men or women, they will tell the person if they're leaving them, their spouse or mate, if you leave me, I'm going to kill myself. And they might be ready to do it. And the person may have to say, I won't leave you. I'll stay with you forever, right? You're not going to say to the person, yeah, I'm going to leave you. And then the person takes their life. And then you're like, oh my gosh. So, when we have to talk people down from a ledge, that may require a lie that we can address later, right? So telling a lie to save a life is definitely something that would be in alignment with Maat. If you're in a situation where you don't want to divulge information, but you're being physically forced, it could be a situation like that. And if the information that someone is trying to force out of you can be detrimental to yourself or other people, of course, telling a lie would be in divine alignment. That would be in alignment with Maat. So it goes to show you that we can find Maat and we can find Isfet or chaos in any situation. The question is, which road will we choose? All right, let's get into Precept 9. So we have An, which we all know by now is no or not. Nehem, to snatch away, seize, to remit a tax. I or me. Unept, bread, cake, food. And I'm adding water. So it doesn't translate as water. But I'm going, the way that I would do this for my own edification, I would add water to it as well, because they both are necessities for life, for living. And we know Maat is all about sustaining life. So my translation is, I will not snatch away, seize, tax food and or water. A variant to that would be controlling and preventing others from having access to food and water. So again, we are intelligent beings, and the Creator gave us the ability to expand things, right? Expand our consciousness. So we don't have to look at each precept in a very limited kind of purview. We can expand the awareness of it. And so looking around today, we know that there's a lot of resources that are being controlled, right? The food industry, we talked about this in another precept, how much food goes to waste, while at the same time, there's people starving to death. So if I'm starving to death, or, and my family is starving, we don't have food, and I need to go take some food from somebody that have a lot of food, am I, living outside of Maat? Absolutely not. Why? Because society has put me in a position where I have to do what it takes to survive, right? Again, we have to kind of hold the society and the social constraints accountable as well when we are really addressing Maat. So absolutely, if a person is famished, they have no other way to eat or get food, then yes, they have to do what they have to do. But even looking at the tax part on here, to remit a tax, right, the brain can begin to expand beyond just that limited sentence. So we're talking about the need for society to also be in alignment with this precept, right? For example, every single person born into time and space will need food, will need water. And the earth is the way in which we get food, right? And water. You can drill a well, but yet no one is born having the ability to automatically get a piece of the land. Even though there's enough land for everyone to have a little portion to survive, the way that society is set up, it's not like that, right? There's people who have ownership. They've seized the ability for us to even grow our own food. And so it creates, again, a society that makes this precept kind of difficult to some extent. And so when we look at who controls the water and the food supplies, now we're paying for water, right? These are natural resources, things that technically every living being should have free access to. Yeah, it should be rationed. One person shouldn't have, too much land. And we looked at that in the previous talk, right? I can't remember how many. It was a ridiculous amount of acreage of land that Bill Gates owned, and it was 15 people, I think, own most of the land across the world. So it's psychotic when you think about that. But yeah, you can have homeless people that have nowhere to go. They can be fined or thrown in prison for loitering and things like that. And it's interesting because this planet does not belong to anyone. It's here for all of us to utilize. Also, you see people are, there's taxes. There was a time when taxes was for pretty much everything except food, but there are some states that's actually starting to apply sales tax to groceries as well. So like I was saying, right, looking at this from a macro perspective, why isn't access to water and natural food resources accessible to everyone, or at least to those who don't want to participate in a capitalistic society, right? That's a more Maat type of society. So, okay, yeah, we have those that want to live in a capitalistic society, but yet those who don't should at least be allotted enough of the natural resources that they need to take care of themselves and or their family. All right, precept 10. An. So we all know that's no, not ken. To be angry, to feel indignation, to revile or to curse. And so indignation is anger or annoyance provoked by what is perceived as unfair treatment. Revel or revile is to criticize in an abusive or angrily insulting manner. And then you have which is I or me. I will not have feelings of anger, indignation. I will not revel or revile or curse others. So this is an interesting one, especially as a person who have had to work with anger throughout my life, especially around the indignation, the righteous indignation, and wanting to use anger as a means to make things happen. So this precept is warning us against that, right? It's so that means that we have to develop ways to affect change absence of the anger. And this is, like I said, this is an interesting one because I teeter-totter with this one because I've used anger throughout my life to kind of like get me motivated to do stuff. But as I work on this precept, I see myself evolving, and it's actually an empowering feeling to be able to deal with situations that would normally make me angry from a higher perspective. It just keeps me centered, and then my mind develops strategies to deal with the situation in a much more positive way. So again, talking about the righteous indignation, right? When we think about all the oppressive things that are happening, not, just around the world, there's a lot of oppression, a lot of famine. We talked about that in the previous show. So there's a lot of things that could really make us feel the need to develop this righteous indignation. And so it's interesting that that precept even pointed that out. And so as a spiritual practitioner and, initiate, constantly trying to evolve spiritually, this is one that, again, like I work on every day. Here we have a quote from Martin Luther King: "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." So I want to dive into this anger construct a little bit more. So most of us know that anger is not healthy, right? According to this article, everyone has experienced anger. The intensity of your anger can range from profound annoyance to extreme rage. It's normal and healthy to feel angry from time to time in response to certain situations. So there you have it, right? When we start looking at the social implications and the societal perspective on something like anger, we are taught as children that it's normal, right? And this article even tells you that it's healthy to feel angry from time to time in response to certain situations. So now that's a little contradictory to what we just read, especially when we know that each time we get angry and our bodies go through that hormonal stress, right? That it's not healthy. It's physically unhealthy. But yet, here we have this article, and there's plenty of articles like this. Like I said, we're taught this as children, that it's normal to be angry in certain situations. So we have to look at that construct and begin fixing that and cleaning it up in our unconscious and subconscious mind in order to really begin to be able to be in alignment with that precept. But sometimes people experience an uncontrollable anger that often escalates, especially when the provocation is minor. In this case, anger is not a normal emotion, but a major problem. Again, it's telling you when anger is normal and when it's not. And that precept is letting us know that it's not normal. It's actually in alignment with Isfet. And again, most of us know from being angry that it is taxing on the body, definitely on the brain. All right, what causes anger and anger problems? Anger comes from a variety of sources and can vary widely. Some common anger triggers include personal problems such as missing a promotion at work or relationship difficulties, a problem caused by another person such as canceling plans, an event like bad traffic or getting in a car accident, memories of a traumatic or enraging event. In other cases, an anger problem can be caused by early trauma or events in a person's life that have shaped their personality. In some cases, hormonal changes can also cause anger, as can certain mental disorders. And the reason why I highlighted that is because, again, so now here we have a precept that has a biological component, right? It's saying that, yeah, there are some people that will have hormonal changes, right? Some people say women do it, monthly. I'm PMSing. It could be early childhood trauma or a mental disorder. So we're seeing, okay, yeah, so if a person is dealing with this for any of these biological reasons, does that mean they have to live with it and become a victim or a slave to it? Absolutely not. It's just going to require more effort and energy for them to do the work to overcome it than someone who don't have that particular biological slash personality flaw or fetter. So again, I want us to start seeing this as every single person will have quite a few of biological triggers, whether it's white matter, gray matter in the brain, hormonal changes, whatever, that we will have to work to overcome when we are ready to start elevating ourselves truly in order to live in accordance to Maat. So again, I can't reiterate that enough. Everyone has predisposed impressions, conditions, and wiring that he or she will need to overcome in life. That is a part of why we incarnated into time and space. And as you probably all got at, this is actually one of my predisposed conditions, something that was passed down to me genetically. And that was, again, having anger issues. And so early on, before I started really working on it, I was verbally abusive sometimes. And actually it primed me later to be a practitioner of righteous indignation. So as I started growing spiritually, I started turning my anger against the people who didn't want to grow spiritually, right? And again, I had to continue to work through it. So just using myself as an example, when we are sincerely evolving, we have to find our issues and then develop the desire to work on them. So this is interesting, again, showing how society and socially we are coerced into living out this particular, precept, living against it. So bosses are actually able to yell at us. And I've actually seen this in the workplace where bosses are yelling and insulting people and bullying them. And in a Maat society, that wouldn't be acceptable, right? Because you wouldn't, put somebody in a position of, I don't even want to say inferiority, but in a position that's beneath you in the hierarchy, and then utilize your position above them to verbally abuse them. Again, that's a part of the society in which we live in. It's a social norm. So many of us were yelled at as children, and many of us yell at our children. So I wanted to share this video just to allow us to see ourselves and see how that particular precept is marinated all throughout this culture that we live in.
The video starts with a Maryland mother holding a bottle of magic disappearing ink.
I'm going to squirt it all over his carpet and start flipping out.
That's exactly what she does. Then she screams for her 10-year-old son, Cody.
What the? I didn't do that!
Even the father joins in, as the youngster says he didn't do anything.
Why did you do that?
You ruined the carpet.
Get out of here, mind your business! I didn't do that! Mommy, Dad, I didn't
Oh my God.
Another son is suddenly dragged into it.
You were up here too? No!
You did it too! You broke it! Both youngsters burst into tears. They're shattered to be so falsely accused. Only after 3 minutes of torment do the parents finally reveal it's all a prank.
We got you,
He's the psychologist, Dr. Jeffrey Gardier.
It may have been well-intentioned, and maybe they thought it was funny, but I saw it as something that was very difficult for the kids to go through. It looked to me like those kids were really scared.
So again, right, just trying to take these precepts and really bring them home, right? It's one thing to just read, don't yell and curse at people or whatever. But then we have to be aware of how we're primed to use that as a tactic in our everyday life. And again, as we are practitioners of Maat and then also propagators of Maat, again, we want to kind of like help to change the social norms around every precept. And so there you have it. This is very common in many homes. This is a tactic for raising children. All right, let's get to the last precept for tonight, precept 11. We have on, no, not, okay, copulate. So a definition for copulate male reproductive organ enters and releases semen, right? So copulation is essentially involving the male, the penis. And you can see right here in the hieroglyphs, it's the penis, and its semen is dripping from it. And then we have A or which is I or me. And then we have the penis again, dripping semen, okay? Copulate, male reproductive organ enters and releases semen. Then we have or A. In this context, it's a man. So when you look at the glyphs, you have to be able to distinguish, right? Because some of them have multiple meanings, which one is being used here. So in this one, it's depicting a man. So before I go into the translation, there is, because some people have translated this as I and I, and then they translated this to meaning I have not copulated with myself. And so that would be masturbation. And that's not what these hieroglyphs are depicting. Masturbation is this glyph here. And Dada would depict masturbation. So within this context, the second drawing of the man sitting is making reference to another man, not the self. Translation: I will not copulate or be copulated by a man. I have not committed homosexuality. This was, again, like I was saying, you'll see different people's translations. And so what I found to be interesting was that people have been changing this precept from my perspective because of the climate that we're living in, the sexual climate that we're living in. And people are afraid of being attacked or persecuted for translating this precept in the way in which I see it as being written. And so I have not committed homosexuality was actually in the original Egyptian Book of the Dead, translated by Raymond Faulkner. And then that edition was discontinued and a new edition was released where it was later changed to I have not fornicated with the fornicator, which, again, that's not what I'm seeing when I see this clip. I think, he had it right the first time. And again, I've seen that with other books as well, and by other authors, where initially that was the translation for the most part, and then it changed to something else that didn't really correlate fully with the glyphs. So there's two penises there for a reason. So then the question can be raised, well, is it just men? So when we're dealing with Maat philosophy, Maat wisdom, when we're approaching it from a place of purity and not a place of trying to justify or find loopholes, then we can allow the mind to expand and say, it's the saying, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? Because then we understand the essence of the precept and why it's written. And so as we continue to look at this precept, hopefully the essence will be conveyed. So why is there so much controversy around this precept as opposed to the other precepts? And I can tell you from my own experience when I'm teaching classes and when we're going over the precepts, people are loving the class. Everyone's happy. And then when we start getting to the precepts, if I have people in the class that are practicing, homosexuality, they become very upset, and they just turn. It's like they throw everything else out that they were getting from the class, and they become defensive, even though I'm just sharing what's already there from a place of non-judgment and love, but it still stirs up something in them. And so I wanted to kind of like explore, why. So in 1976, there was a study by Gwen Brood and Sarah Green, and they compared attitudes towards and frequency of homosexuality in the ethnographic studies available in the standard cross culture sample. They found that out of 42 communities, homosexuality was accepted or ignored in 9. 5 communities had no concept of homosexuality. 11 considered it undesirable, but did not set punishments, and 17 strongly disapproved and punished. So out of these societies, right, out of the numbers, 17, which was the highest number, strongly disapproved and punished people who were practitioners of that in that society. And as a result, it has a history of physical, mental, and emotional abuse associated with it in some societies and cultures. I mean, I even remember as a young person, people verbally abused and also physically abused people who were homosexual. And so because of that history, it makes this topic very, touchy-feely for many people, rightfully so. And it creates this controversy around it. So it's what I think is part of the reason why there's this hypersensitivity, right? And feeling the need to protect oneself from attack now. It also can create the belief that if someone does not support it, right, which is exerting energy to perpetuate it, then they are against it, exerting energy to stop it. And I've been in situations like that where I don't necessarily support something, but I'm not against it, I'm neutral. But people want you to pick a side. And so that's also becoming a part of the culture now. However, there are precepts that, when lived and practiced, protect others from acts of violence and abuse, right? We've been talking about those precepts, right? I have not committed murder. We just went over yelling and verbally abusing people. So when we're living in a society based on Maat, it would naturally create a protection. No one should have to be abused for any reason, So that's why the precepts are there. However, it can't be ignored that this precept too helps to protect society against something as well. And so we have to think about that, and say, well, even though that precept may be controversial, others are as well. They can be, right? Whenever someone wants to justify something, it can create controversy. But at the same time, we want to understand and get into the mindset of the commitments when they wrote that precept and why it was written. So when we think about Maat includes and supports creation, which is progeny, right? We talked about that. Isfet is the opposite. So Isfet drives dissolution. It drives destruction of the planet, destruction of the human race, destruction of animals, right? That's the opposite of progeny. So heterosexuality is the de facto for procreation. No one can deny that, right? However, duality demands the opposite to exist. So we have to have homosexuality in society, because this society, time and space is built, right, off of duality. And so therefore, if one thing exists, then the opposing force will exist as well. And we went over this early on, so this is just a review. So divine order is the inherent arrangement or disposition of things based on supreme consciousness, mental projection, movement of source, the supreme the supreme divinity Ra, right? And then duality is time and space exists based on the construct of duality, everything having an opposing force. Hence, there will always be a choice between either being in alignment with divine order or against divine order. So even though these all come from the creator, right? Because duality demands that both exist, one has to be in alignment with Maat, which means the other has to be in alignment with Isfet. And what's going to be in alignment with Maat is going to be that which sustains creation or progeny. And the one that does not sustain progeny would have to be classified as being in alignment with Isfet, chaos. That's why the precept is there. So let's look at this construct of sexuality a little bit deeper. So why sex feels good to your brain? The brain is its own pleasure center during sex. Just being physically close with another human being is known to increase levels of oxytocin, the cuddling hormone, in the brain, making you feel happy and safe. Scientists know that certain parts of the brain are associated with pleasure, becoming more active after consuming food or drugs or having sex, right? And these are things that usually consume us, sex, food, and drugs. When we have sex, the physical signals felt by the body send signals through our nerves to the brain, which reacts by releasing chemicals that make us experience even more pleasure. Some research suggests that rhythmic nature of sex and sexual stimulation creates a physical, psychological loop of pleasure. And that's important as when we go on, I want you to remember this rhythmic piece, right? As physical pleasure increases during the orgasm phase of sex, so does psychological pleasure. And more psychological pleasure increases physical pleasure. The research also suggests that the rhythm of sex can help women and men choose appropriate sexual partners. A person will tend toward a sexual partner whose rhythm brings them the most pleasure, because a good rhythm is a measure of sexual fitness. And I'm going to expound on that as we move forward, right? So when sex is not only about progeny, so we know from a pure biological perspective, right, the purpose of sex, the primary purpose of sex is to procreate. But at the same time, it has this other component. It's a way for us to feel good. So that means it can alleviate stress, right? There's been proof that under the right conditions, it can add longevity to your life and things of that nature. So it serves that purpose as well. So it's practice. So it is a practice, right? So anyway, we got that. It causes a physical, mental, and spiritual good feeling in some cases. In some cases, it can cause you to feel good spiritually if it's done in a tantric kind of way. Just about everyone is wired to want to feel good, right? We can't argue that. So if we're wired to want to feel good, then we're going to gravitate towards the things that will make us feel good. This desire to feel good can drive us to behave in ways that negatively impact ourselves and others. And since we know that sex is a very strong driving force, especially when we want to feel good, there has to be precepts. And there's several precepts surrounding sexuality, right? To warn us, to help us understand there's a way to use sex to benefit ourselves and society, and ways to use it where it's counterproductive or detrimental to ourselves and society. So hormones and human sexual orientation. Many people believe that sexual orientation or homosexuality versus heterosexuality is determined by education and social constraints. However, there are, however, a large number of studies indicating that prenatal factors have an important influence on this critical feature of human sexuality. Sexual orientation is a sexually differentiated trait. Over 90% of men are attracted to women and vice versa. In animals and men sexually differentiate characteristics are organized during early life by sex steroids. And one can wonder whether the same mechanism also affects human sexual orientation. Two types of evidence support this notion. First, multiple sexually differentiated behavioral, physiological, or even morphological traits are significantly different in homosexuals and heterosexual populations. Because some of these traits are known to be organized by prenatal steroids, including testosterone. These differences suggest that homosexual subjects were on average exposed to atypical endocrine conditions during development. Second, clinical conditions associated with significant endocrine changes during embryonic life often result in an increased incidence of homosexuality. It seems, therefore, that the prenatal endocrine environment has a significant influence on human sexual orientation, but a large fraction of the variance in this behavioral characteristic remains unexplained to date. Genetic differences affecting behavior, either in a direct manner or by changing embryonic hormone secretion or action, may also be involved. How these biological prenatal factors interact with postnatal social factors to determine lifelong sexual orientation remains to be determined. And I wanted to read that, and I didn't want to put that in my own words because we're dealing with scientific research. And so we see right there through the scientific research, just like the pathological liar, right? Just like the person who has anger issues, there's a physiological component. In this case, they're talking about an exposure to hormones, right, in certain amounts during the prenatal phase. So there you have it. There are going to be people, just like any other condition, that are going to be predisposed to this. However, the precept was written to let us know that, yeah, you may be predisposed, but we can still work on, if you so choose, if you want to work on living in alignment with Maat. So most people are sexually attracted to individuals of the opposite sex. They are heterosexual. There is, however, a significant minority, 3 to 10%, according to many estimates, of men and women who are exclusively attracted to individuals of their own sex. They are homosexual. And so, there you have it. If I'm wired to be attracted to my same sex, and then I know that sex makes me feel good, and we talked about that rhythm thing, I can't just physically force myself, right? I can't just turn it off. I can't just go and say, okay, I'm gonna be with a man, and I don't have that attraction, that rhythm. It's not going to be as pleasurable, for me if I'm with someone that's within that rhythm. And so that's something that we have to take into consideration. But again, we're just talking about the physiological constraints that a person would have to overcome, or the biological, if they decide that they want to. And so the question becomes, is this grounds for removing this precept, right? If we know that there are people that are born like this, just like the pathological liars, or just like the people with anger issues, should we remove this precept? And my answer is, if so, then we would also need to remove a great portion of other precepts, right? Considering the fact that many of them do have a biological triggering component, including pedophilia. And pedophilia is the next one that's on the rise, because now there's a movement based on this same ideology. Oh, there's a physiological component that's driving them. And we already know, we don't care what's driving a person to be a pedophile. We won't support it. Most people won't, because we don't want children abused. So then that means society has to make sure things are in place to assist these people and protect children and things of that nature. And yeah, it's a different type of sexual deviation from sexuality under the umbrella of Maat. But again, we would not let people who are pedophiles just go out in the world and practice pedophilia because of this brain component. And so that's why, from my perspective, regardless of the social conditioning or the social status of this precept, it should not be removed or eradicated. Why? Other than what I said, because erasing this precept leads to the growing movement to promote it as a social choice absent of biological conditioning via parades, organizations demanding it to be promoted in schools, entertainment, legislature. I can tell you as a parent, I was not really pleased with sexuality being promoted to my grade school children at all. And when you're promoting homosexuality, you're promoting sexuality, and there's no place for that in grade school, in middle school, in high school, whatever. Yeah, but I mean, I had to deal with that as a parent because there was this movement, this desire to promote this as a social choice. And so I had my son come home telling me that his teacher read him a book, and I think maybe the 5th grade. I have 2 daddies. And he's, so my son came home now with these questions that I had to answer. And so again, there's this movement, right, to push it, to promote it. And that's what erasing the precept can lead to. The persistent desire to not live in accordance to any divine law, right? It's like, if we can remove this and, we don't want to promote that under the guise of Maat, then we don't really need to live in accordance to any divine laws, right? We'll let everyone live and do whatever they want, which is why the world is in the condition that it's in now. Movements that attempt to justify it as being in alignment with Maat. And I think this is the biggest reason why this precept is controversial, because I can be sitting in a class and people who are in the class, I'm teaching the class, and people who are in the class who know that they're pathological liars, they don't get upset. They just keep reading the precepts. The adulterers don't get upset. The fornicators don't get upset. The angry people don't get upset. But people who are practicing this particular lifestyle, they get upset. And a part of it is because they want it not to only be accepted, but they want people to say it's in divine alignment. And that is what makes it controversial. A part of what makes it controversial, especially when you're teaching Maat. Erasing the precept also leads to the growing desire to make homosexuality or bisexuality more desirable than heterosexuality. And so that comes from when acceptance of and ignoring homosexuality is not enough. When I started sharing the information on this particular precept, I talked about how in plenty of societies it was ignored and accepted. There was no one physically, or verbally abusing the people, and that's how a normal society should be, right? However, when we erase this precept, then it opens the way for people wanting more than people just accepting it and ignoring it, right? They want it to become, a legitimate form of sexuality. And that's when, you have to start saying, well, one path is going to be under Maat and another path is going to be under Isfet. And this is another thing that I've had to, see and deal with. There's a lot of false accounts and interpretations of ancient Kemetic paintings and writings revering homosexuality. And again, we know that homosexuality was in Kemet, bisexuality was in Kemet. It's something that's going to be in every culture, right? Because you're going to have people born with that so-called wiring. However, saying that it was revered is taking it, to another extreme, right? People didn't abuse people, but apparently the sages wrote that precept for a reason. And so, finally, in summation, we see that there's a major rise. So from 2012, I don't know if you can see that, up until 2020, you see the rise in the LGBT community has been growing very rapidly. And so the question becomes, is it biologically or socially driven? And for the socially driven part, those of us who are, again, promoters of Maat, we want to make sure that we are standing up for Maat by simply not eradicating or erasing the precept, but being transparent. So, therefore, this precept does what? Ding, 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 ding. It helps to protect progeny, right? And we all know that, because if this graph, right, if this number goes up and 50% of the population or 70% of the population decides to practice homosexuality because it's just the social fact, it's socially acceptable, then the human race becomes endangered, right? Progeny goes down. So therefore, if for no other reason, the precept has to remain because it's designed to protect progeny. That's what Maat is about. Isfet is the opposite, dissolution, no procreation. All right, and I will close with this. I think this is the third or fourth time. So everyone, all of us, we have predisposed impressions, conditions, and wiring that he or she will need to overcome in life. That is a part of why we incarnated into time and space. However, the desire to overcome them must first develop. So overcoming something is not easy, right? It's easy to overcome something that I'm not hardwired to do. If I don't have a predisposition to something or some major impressions in my unconscious and subconscious mind or conditioning, it's easy for me. There's certain precepts that I've never acted out, right? Because I wasn't wired to. But then there's some precepts that I have to continuously work at because I was hardwired or predisposed, or I have impressions that make that almost a natural way of who I am. And so when we're talking about offering the lower self so that the higher self can take its rightful place, the things that we have to overcome are going to be things that are wired, right? Things that are very difficult. That's what sacrifice is. That's what offering is. So we just have to be in alignment with the ones that we came here with, the ones that we picked up with. And again, if we are sincere about elevating and manifesting our divinity and being vessels for the Creator, then those are the ones that we have to work on. And for a lot of us, there will be a physiological component. There will be a hormonal component, right? That's going to require us to really dig deep and get the support and the tools that we need to overcome those conditions and the wiring. So we have the freedom to purchase a gun in many states, but not the right to use it to commit crime. We have the freedom to live outside of divine law, but not the right to. And that's from Ra and Nefer Amen. And I may have tweaked it a little bit, but I captured the gist of what he conveys in his quote. So hopefully that was food for thought, right? So again, we have the freedom to do whatever we want. We can live totally outside of Maat, but we don't really have the right to. And that's what the precepts are here for, to help guide us, to help give us the correct understanding and the correct wisdom so that we can lead ourselves in society out of the darkness that we are in. To tap. Do anyone have any questions or comments? If you have any questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat. So while I give folks a moment to drop a question or comment in the chat, I have decided to make this the last of the Maat series. I know we've only gone up to Precept 11, but I decided to go ahead and put this series in a book format. And in the book, I can really expound even more. And so I'm planning on releasing the book. And I didn't start out with this. I just kind of like morphed into this feeling. So my goal is to release the book early 2022, definitely before the summer. And right now, I think the title will be Maat Wisdom Teachings for Self and Societal Healing. So unless something changes, this will conclude the Maat series in this format. All right, so I'm just looking at some of the comments. Dua for the comments. Do anyone have a question or comment about anything? Dua Busi. Nice to see you on. Thank you for joining. Well, I'll ask a question if anyone wants to answer it. Did you find this talk useful? And do you feel like you can take something from it and apply it on your spiritual journey? Anyone can drop something in there. All right, there we go. Dua Solaris, appreciate that. Well, Ankh Uja Seneb, Big Dua. Okay, we got another one. Thank you, Asada. Appreciate that. Thank you, Jalisa. I appreciate that as well. All right. Well, again, big Ankh Uja Seneb, Life, Vitality, Health. Also Mer, Aki, Hetep, that's divine love, joy, and peace. Thank you all for sharing your time and space and energy with me. Hetep.